Hello and Happy New Year, and welcome back to the channel. For the first video in 2019, we're working yet again on the 180SX, and today we're going to be finally getting around to doing something that I've been meaning to do for many months since buying this car, and that is replacing the head unit. This is the head unit the 180SX arrived from Japan with. It's an old school Pioneer Carrozzeria FHP51 0MD. And there's not a great deal I can tell you about it, since all the information I've been able to find about it on the internet is in Japanese. However, I did find one English webpage from 2007 saying that brand new this would have cost you $400, which is really expensive for a head unit, especially back then. It has the usual radio and CD player in it, but the interesting feature is that it can play mini discs, which is not something I've ever seen before in a car stereo. I think this was a feature pretty much reserved exclusively for the Japanese market, as I think minidiscs were quite popular there, but they never really took off outside of Japan, so it's definitely not something that's really useful to me. It took me a while just to get hold of this minidisc to test it with. The head unit does have some cool features in it that relate to how the music sounds, such as a fader setting, a balance setting and a loudness setting. However, they don't really work very well anymore, and the head unit itself doesn't sound that great, I suspect as the internal components have worn out. And also the silver fascia of it doesn't really match the rest of the dashboard, which is all a sort of black or dark grey, and the light show it puts on in the dark is a bit garish for my liking. Plus, over the last few months of using it, I've been reminded just how much of a pain in the arse it used to be to carry around CDs in your car. So now's the perfect time to change it for something more modern that can connect wirelessly to my music devices. And the replacement head unit I've chosen is this. The elegantly named Pioneer FH-X730BT. So this Pioneer head unit is a double DIN unit, and it has tons and tons of features. It's iPod compatible, so you can plug your iPod or iPhone into it. It's also Android compatible, which is not something I've seen before, so it will work with Android smartphones like Samsungs and stuff. It's got a USB port, so you can plug devices into it to charge. You can put USB sticks into it to play directly from. It's got an aux jack, of course, so you can plug just about any device into it. It's got Bluetooth, so you can connect to it wirelessly. It's got Spotify inside of it. It's got hands-free set. It's got all sorts of stuff. It can handle MP3 files and also FLAC files, if that's your thing. It has something called Mix Tracks on it, which is a piece of Pioneer software that's used for shuffling music or making playlists or other stuff. Some of you might be wondering why I didn't go for a double DIN head unit with a proper screen, which would also have obviously things like satellite navigation and proper apps, and also things like a DVD player and stuff. And the reason is that I don't really like screens in cars that much. I tend to find them a bit distracting, and also this is a car from the 90s, and I just don't think a screen would fit very well. Whereas this, you know, is just a nice double DIN head unit. It looks a little bit like a hi-fi component actually, with the big silver volume knob, and it's black, so it should fit in the hole and sort of match up with the interior a lot better than the original Carrozzeria unit that the car came with, and also, mainly to the point, it should sound a lot better. Oh yeah, and it's got a CD player in it as well. I forgot to mention that, so I can still use my old CDs if I want to. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is obviously expose the old head unit. So, as in the last video, we're going to have to remove the gear knob and then remove this plastic fascia. And now you can see here, there's just 4 screws. There's one there, and then 2 down here, holding the head unit cage into the dashboard. Okay, that's all the screws removed, so now hopefully this will just come out. A little bit of persuasion. There we are. That's now free. Okay, so here's the old head unit extracted, and it doesn't actually have a DIN cage. It's using these two brackets which screw onto the side of the head unit itself, which seems to be meant for this car. So we'll try and reuse those on the new head unit rather than using the double DIN cage. But the next thing to sort out is the wiring, and you can see it's a little bit of a jumble back here. What I was hoping would have been done with this head unit, because it is aftermarket, is that the person who installed it would have converted this over to use a standard ISO plug. Unfortunately, they haven't done that. That doesn't seem to be the way things are done in Japan, at least not back then. What they've actually done is they've actually used here the factory Nissan wiring plug that would have gone to the original single DIN head unit that this car would have come out the factory with. And then what they've done is they've used these bullet connectors to connect it all to the head unit. So we've been doing a little bit of comparison work between the original wiring here and this. This is the harness that was given to us with the new Pioneer head unit, and as you can see, it's terminated in the industry standard double ISO plugs. Now, one thing we did discover is that the head unit plug on both harnesses, on both the wiring, is actually the same. Pioneer clearly over the last 20 years hasn't changed their wiring connector. Unfortunately, the wiring colours go to completely different pins on the plugs themselves, so unfortunately we can't just plug this plug into the new head unit and have it work. If we tried that, we'd probably end up damaging something because all the voltages would be going to the wrong place. But we have had a look at this wiring, and it should actually be pretty easy to rectify, because everything you can see here between the factory Nissan connectors and these bullet connectors, well, it has a bullet connector, so this can all be unplugged. What we're going to do is go down to Halfords, get some ISO plugs that will fit onto the harness, and then we're going to unplug all these bullet connectors, chop them off, and then terminate these leads into ISO connectors, which then means we will have effectively a Nissan to ISO adapter cables for both of these plugs, and that will be a nice, clean, tidy install, and it will plug straight into the new head unit and should work pretty well. So we're just in Halfords looking at the ISO connectors, and we found this, an actual Nissan ISO adapter harness, and we've had a look at it. Here's one here, and it says on the back that it will fit a Nissan 200SX up to the year 2000. Now my car's a 180SX, but it's the same chassis and pretty much the same wiring, so we're going to have a look at this. We're going to see if we can get one of the staff to open this up and have a look at the wiring for us, and if it all seems to match up, then we'll probably buy this one and try and use that, and we can always chop it up a bit if we need to, and it's the same sort of price as the universal one which we were going to buy, so that's a bit of a win. Okay, so we're back in the car with the Nissan adapter cable, and unfortunately it doesn't fit. You can see the connectors here are a completely different size. Well, this one looks like it's the same size, but the pin size and connections are completely different, so it would appear that this is meant for, unsurprisingly, this is meant for a UK or European Nissan audio harness, which is slightly different to the JDM one. It's got slightly different plugs on it, so unfortunately it isn't going to be a plug and play fitment like we were hoping, but it was worth a try. However, of course, this does fit into the harness for the head unit very well, because it's an ISO plug. So simply what we're going to have to do is cut the wires off at these bullet connectors, and then cut the connectors off of the adapter cable, and just solder all the colours together to make our original adapter cable, as was our original plan, and then it will all plug together and hopefully work without a problem. Okay, so I've disconnected the original wiring from the plugs, I've cut the connectors off the adapter, and I've stripped all the connections back, queued it up with some heat shrink, so all I've got to do now is the rather tedious process of soldering all those connections to all these connections, and fortunately they are all colour coded and they all do match. At least that wiring is universal, so all I've got to do is just match them up and solder them. Okay, so we've finally done all the soldering. See, I plugged it into the harness we were given, and all nicely soldered up and connected with heat shrink here. So we've got an adapter for any future head unit I may want to put in if I decide I don't like this one for whatever reason. But for now that's all plugged in, so all that remains now is to plug into the new head unit, see if it'll power on, and give it a quick test. Okay, so we've plugged it all in, and initially it wasn't working very well. We had a bit of problem There were problems trying to get it to turn on. It wouldn't turn on at all. And then we realised that the problem is that the body of the head unit itself is not earthed. Because there's actually there's no direct earth between the body and the earth for the circuit board. So what we have done is we've got this wire, which at the other end is attached to the door lock, which is obviously an earth point, and if I touch it to the chassis of the head unit, it should power on. There we go. So it's obviously in its initial setup stage because it hasn't been turned on before properly, but it does all seem to be working. Unfortunately, it's rather dark right now, so I've had to get my work light out. So I think what we'll do is we'll leave this till tomorrow, and then we'll sort out a proper chassis earth that loops in with the regular circuit board earth, and then we can get this working properly. So it's a new day, and I've made a bit more progress with the head unit. I bought some self-tapping screws of the right size, and managed to attach the old brackets from the original head unit that will allow this to fit nicely into the hole. It's probably a good thing I bought another Pioneer head unit to replace the old one, because otherwise those brackets might not have fit. I've also managed to solve the earth issue. I cut the earth cable off the old head unit, and I've fastened it here to the side of the cage with one of the screws. And on the other end I've crimped on this ring terminal that will go around that screw there that holds this gear lever protector thing on, and that will provide a nice earth, which means the head unit should all work properly. So now all I have to do is plug in all the wiring that we sorted out yesterday, fix this earth cable down, screw the head unit into place, and with any luck I can actually start turning it on and programming it up. I had to lose the square trim piece around the edge of the head unit, unfortunately, because it won't fit in the gap there. Okay, the head unit is all plugged in, it's in place, haven't screwed it down yet. It's now powered on. I've got the key in the accessory position, so we now have to sort it out in terms of programming it. So language English, that'll do. The time is 3:05 PM, so 3 PM. Got to match the car clock, otherwise that'll annoy me. There we go. FM step. I think that's the level at which it jumps between stations. We'll put it at 05 just for shits and giggles. Speaker mode. Network standard. Oh, standard, because we've got no subs or anything like that. Yes. Yeah, I suppose. Quit. Yes. This would appear to be its standby setting, so if I press source, menu, initial. I have no idea what's going on here. Okay, I've made the radio work. The aerial has come up, which is a good sign at the back, so that means that's working. See if I can try and get a radio station.
Lets it go over his shoulder.
Okay, well, I've managed to get BBC Three Counties radio, which is currently doing sport, so I won't get a copyright strike for that. It's not coming in very well, although Three Counties radio doesn't come in very well around where I live. What about Radio 4? BBC Oxford?
As early as 20 seconds when Bobson
Yeah.
Bowling slipped over.
Absolute silence.
There we go, Radio 4.
Absolute silence.
Absolute silence.
Well, it's not absolute silence, it's absolute coming through the radio, so that's a pretty good result. We can go pretty loud. So that's good, the radio's working. Let's just go for a few of the sources now. So I press that, it's the aux jack, press it again, BT audio, no service. I think that's Bluetooth. So what I have here is I've got my iPod. This is an iPod Touch 4th gen, I think. So if I go in the Bluetooth menu, it should hopefully, yep, there we go. And it's found my Pip-Boy as well. So if I press that, that's the radio, and then it'll hopefully connect to it, and oh, there we go. Okay, I got it connected. What I had to do was actually I had to press the volume knob in to confirm that I wanted to pair both devices, and then it synced right up. So I'll play some, try and find some royalty-free music. There we go. And that's coming through. There's the song name on the head unit, that's nice. Yep, it fast forwards. Awesome! Well, the Bluetooth seems to be working. And I can presumably skip tracks, although that's the end of that playlist, so it goes back to the start. I had a look in the manual on how to use Spotify with this, and what you do is you download Spotify on your phone, you then pair the phone with the head unit, and then you can control the Spotify app through the head unit somehow. I don't have a Spotify account though. I'm probably one of like the last 5 people on planet Earth who doesn't have one, so I probably won't be using that. The Mix Tracks thing, which is some sort of proprietary software that's in this, I had a brief look at that. I have no real idea what it does. It seems to be some sort of playlist software like you'd use on some kind of party hi-fi. I don't know. But main thing is this all seems to be working. Only one irritation I have is that whenever the head unit is on, it puts the, you can't really see it, it puts the electric aerial up. Even when you're in a non-radio mode, which is a little bit annoying because the old head unit didn't do that. If you went over to the CD player, it would turn the aerial off, it would put it down, whereas this has it all the way up. And because I don't actually listen to the radio really at all, I always listen to my iPod or to CDs, I'm actually going to go back there and I'm going to unplug the connection for the antenna so it will never go up. And that does mean I won't really be able to listen to the radio, but that's no problem for me. So that's just a little adjustment that I'm going to make. And then once I've unplugged that, I'll put the radio back in, I'll screw it down properly, and then I will reinstall all the fascia and button everything up. And also I can probably now remove all this plastic protective stuff. Okay, everything's back together. I've unplugged the aerial. Strangely enough, I can still get some local radio stations even without it extended, which is nice, so that's a good thing. Got the interior fascia plate back in, and it looks rather smart. It definitely looks a lot nicer than the old silver one. What I'm doing now is I'm just going to sort out the illumination, because as you can see it's gently scanning through the colours. So I go in illumination, colour, that's it. Key colour, display colour, both. Let's do both. Scan, which is what it's on at the moment. Ah, there we go. White, red, amber, orange, yellow, pure green, green. So you can have a sort of cyberpunk green and then just a straight green. Turquoise, it's quite nice. Light blue, that's quite a nice one. Normal blue, purple, pink. Oh yes. Now that's a stylish look right there. Now, I think I will put it on probably a white. That sounds good to me. I then took some time to explore the sound settings inside the head unit, but I didn't really do anything with them. I did use the fader to shift the sound a bit more towards the front speakers, as they're a bit more capable than the rear speakers, but I didn't really fiddle with much of it, as partly because I don't know what most of it does, and also because the people who built this stereo and designed it have probably already set it up fairly well, and they know a lot more about in-car audio than I do, so messing with their settings didn't seem like a sensible option. Suffice it to say though, this head unit does have a lot of options to adjust when it comes to how the music sound and for speaker settings and things like that, so if you're into all that sort of thing and you know how to work it, then this could be a head unit for you. I've been using the new head unit for a couple of weeks now, and I can definitely say that it is a vast improvement over the old one. The sound comes much clearer and sharper through the speakers than it used to, and also it doesn't top out the speakers as much as the old one used to. Sometimes when the old head unit was playing very loud music, the speakers would become a bit crackly, whereas this one doesn't seem to be able to at all, no matter how much I turn it up, which is pretty good. I have played around with some of the equalizer settings to try and make the music sound a bit more how I want it to, and I'm not quite fully satisfied with it yet, but it's definitely a good improvement, so I'll continue to mess with it and see what I can achieve. I haven't actually been using my iPod to play music as I planned. For the moment I've been using this USB stick. I've simply loaded it up with a playlist of about 200 MP3s, and it just plugs straight into the USB port on the head unit and it plays directly from it. It's a lot quicker than connecting via Bluetooth, and I don't need to worry about having a cable going all over the center console by the gear stick, so it's pretty useful to play from there, although it doesn't give you quite the same level of selection of what track you want as you would with an iPod, but it's pretty good for now. Well, that just about wraps it up for this install video, so I hope you all enjoyed watching. I have been trying for the first time in this video to add narrative sections to the video, just like this one. It's a little experiment I'm trying out to give the video a bit more character, a bit more dynamism. So if you are one of my 5 or 6 regular viewers, then let me know what you think of it. So bye bye for now, and I'll see you all next time.